Hello everyone, welcome back to another Smite Tactics tier list video. In this video we'll be discussing the Greek Pantheon. So without further ado, let's get started.
Today I fight not for Olympus, but for myself. These immortals must be shown the order of things.
Zeus is a range leader just like Ra, same attack, same health. And he also has the ability spend 2 mana to draw a card. Right now I think Zeus is the best leader in the game, even though before, in my last video, I said that drawing a card is not that great in this game because of the limited deck size. Being able to use it on an ability, like a hero ability, is very strong. With Ra, all you're doing is healing your team in an adjacent area. That is good, but not great. Drawing a card, even though it's for 2 mana, when you're out of cards in the endgame, you're getting 1 more card than your opponent is for virtually free, which makes him a really powerful leader ability and a really good leader himself, especially because he is ranged. Let's go to the first Greek spell, and that is Teleport. Very self-explanatory. 1 mana, teleport a friendly anywhere on the map. So this card is okay, but not anything special. What you're going to do with Teleport is you're either going to move a unit that you want to get close to the opponents, you're going to teleport them close, because with Teleport you can also still perform a movement or an attack after you use Teleport, so that makes it good in that regard. And also what it can be good for is escaping. Say you get completely pinned down by your opponent, you can use Teleport to get to the other side of the map to buy yourself some time. So Teleport is an alright card. It can definitely be used in some situations, but the problem is it is very situational, and I don't think you should be using one of your card slots for it. Maybe one in some cases, but most of the time I don't think so. Next we have another spell. This is Deathbringer. 2 mana, double the base attack of a friendly god or minion. Wow, so this card is very interesting because it is not a good card on its own, but it is an extremely powerful combo card. These are the type of cards you'll see in decks that are just trying to like 1 turn kill you. You can like say you find a Fury with 6 attack on the field, and then you give it Deathbringer, suddenly it has 12 attack and you are in for a lot of damage. This is where this card shines, is to give those big minions a lot of attack really quickly and just kill you off out of effectively nowhere. But most of the time though, when you play this, if you play this card in just any normal deck, the effect will at best be like gaining 2, maybe 3 attack, and most of the time that card will still also be dying at the same time. So this is a card that you want to build your deck around, and it's not that good on its own. So this is a combo card, not good in any normal deck, but it can have some fun with it. Now we go to our first minion in the Greek Pantheon, that is the Marksman. 2 mana, 1/2, so stats are meh. He is ranged, so that's nice, and he also has Divinity, gain +1 attack. So what does Divinity do? You can see right here, it triggers whenever a friendly god spawns. So basically every time you play a god, whether it be an Aphrodite, a Thanatos, a Medusa, an Athena, he gains +1 attack. So this card used to be very powerful when it had 3 health because it was hard to remove and it could suddenly start doing a lot of damage really quickly. Now it is a little easier to remove with a 2 health, which makes it not nearly as good as it used to be, but still because it is ranged, you can, as long as you position this well, you can still use it to pick off your opponents at a distance. So, still a good card. I would definitely still run it in almost all Zeus decks, but not as good as it once was. Still use it. We have go to another minion now, a Argus. 3 mana, 1/3, so stats are also not that good, especially for even more mana. And it is ranged, so that's nice, and it has Divinity, draw a card. So this card, in my opinion, is very underwhelming and not that good. The stats are terrible, so you gotta keep that in mind as well. It has range, so that's nice, but the Divinity is what kills it for me. Drawing a card is definitely nice, especially when it's easy to trigger with Divinity. Divinity is not that hard to trigger because most of the time you are going to have a lot of gods in your decks. But like I said before with drawing a card, most of the time it's not that good. The one exception to that is when it's your leader ability. But just as a minion with that weak of stats, drawing a card is not that good, so I wouldn't recommend using this card at all. Now we go to our next minion, lots of minions in Zeus. This is the Brute, a 3 mana 1/4. The stats aren't that great, they're okay. But where this card really shines is in that ability, Taunt. So what does Taunt do? Adjacent enemies can only basic attack this unit. That means they cannot run away from this unit. That means they cannot use abilities on this unit. They can only basic attack it. They have to stand still and just hit it until it dies. That is why Taunt is so powerful, because as long as you plant this near any enemy, then they're stuck. They have to deal with this first. They cannot go for any of the big other threats you might have in play. They have to go for this card only. Taunt is very powerful because you have to deal with it. You can't use anything else. If you want to say try to draw a card with Zeus, but he's taunted, you can't draw a card, so you're stuck with whatever you have until you get rid of this. If you're trying to execute it with a Medusa, well, you can't. You have to auto attack it, which most of the time will kill it, but you'll have to take that 1 damage, and that might open up enough damage for your opponent to kill it in its return. So Taunt is a very good card, and a very good effect, and it makes this card very good. Next we have another spell, Divine Intervention. 3 mana, draw 2 random gods from your deck. So this is similar to Ward, which we discussed in the Egyptian Pantheon in the draw 2 cards aspect. Still, this card is not that good, similar to Ward where it's not very good. But this card can be slightly better in the fact that it draws gods, so you know what you're getting out of this card. You know you're getting gods out of it. So that makes this card okay, but one problem with it is that just the drawing effect is not that good right now in the game. You're going to have a lot of gods in your deck, so the odds are you are going to eventually draw your gods at one point. I would say a good bit of them, at least 3 or 4 in the first half of your deck almost every time. So drawing 2 random gods is not that good. I would rather just stockpile lots of gods and minions into my deck and then draw them as it happens. So Divine Intervention is not that good of a card. You can run it because it is slightly better than Ward, but I still don't think you ever should in a Greek deck.
Let the harvest begin.
Now we go to our first god in the Greek Pantheon. This is Thanatos. 3 mana 3/2, so stats are not that good because of the low health. He has Initiative. What does Initiative do? You can use his special ability the turn they spawn. So remember, this is only the ability. This isn't like Charge where you can do anything. This has to be the ability. So what is that ability? It is a good one. Travels to any enemy god or minion with 2 or less health and executes them. So this effect is good in the early game, similar to what you would see from Thanatos in Smite in the actual game. He is good in the early game because in the early game you're going to have a lot of low health minions. So what you can do is you play Thanatos and suddenly they don't have one of their minions and you have a minion. So in return, he's almost like an Execute in that regard, which is why he has Execute in the name. So this card can be very good in the early game because almost every single minion's going to have 2 or less health, and if they don't, you can probably just pick off that 1 health with Zeus's melee or ranged attack, and then you kill him off with the Execute then. So Thanatos is a good card. I don't think you should run 2 of them. Maybe you can, but I think one of them is almost always a must in Greek decks.
Now to find a soulmate.
We go to another god in Aphrodite. She's a 4 mana 1/4, so stats are very bad. She is ranged, which makes up for a little bit of that, but where she really shines is in her ability. She has Initiative, so she uses this ability instantly. That ability is choose a friendly to link to. All damage dealt to the friendly is reduced by 1 and they heal for 1 health at the start of your turn. When they say damage is reduced by 1, that means for every individual attack. Not just like 1 extra health, basically, like 1 armor. This is every attack. So basically, anything trying to damage whatever you're linked to that only has 1 attack will do 0 damage. Which means that everything with 1 attack is effectively useless until you deal with Aphrodite. Now granted, Aphrodite does not get this linked effect, so she can be dealt with, which means she is like the priority target. But the thing is, this can be extremely powerful with something like a taunt. So if you use Aphrodite on a brute, suddenly that brute takes 1 less damage, so it becomes even more tanky, and you have no choice but to deal with it, which makes Aphrodite just super annoying. So Aphrodite, even though her stats are bad, her effect makes up for all of that, and she is a very good card and a must for Greek decks. Next we have another spell, Beacon of Hope. This is a 4 mana, put a random Greek god into the battlefield. Extremely powerful card. Need I say more? What this card does is not only is almost every Greek god really good to get, even if it's one of the lower ones like a Thanatos or an Aphrodite, this can also just give you a huge mana swing. So say you get a Hades or an Athena off of this. That means you're playing a 4 mana card and getting a 5 mana or 6 mana card in return. Which means you're getting it even earlier than your opponent can expect to, which makes them have to deal with it sooner. Also, you can get duplicates. So basically, if you already have an Aphrodite out on the field or a Hades out on the field, you play Beacon of Hope, you can get a second one out on the field, which makes them both extremely hard to deal with. Beacon of Hope is a really good card. You almost always want it in your Greek decks. Really good. Now we have another minion, Brontis, 4 mana, 4/3, so stats are alright. He does not have range, so not that good in that regard. But he has Divinity, gain +1 health. So Brontis is pretty underwhelming. The effect looks nice, the damage is there, the health can be there with the Divinity. But most of the time, because he is a melee character, he is not that good, because it's hard to close that distance with him. He can easily be picked off after he's summoned by ranged attacks. So you can almost summon him and then expect him to be killed off by, say, like a Anher or a Medusa or an Aphrodite plus something else, or Marksman. So Brontis is very easily killed before he can really do anything, which makes him pretty underwhelming.
I'll make everyone feel my
Next
pain.
we have a legendary god, the only legendary god in the Greek pantheon. This is Medusa. 4 mana, 3/5, so stats are extremely good. She is ranged, and her ability turn any damaged enemy god or minion into stone, executing them. So basically what I'm saying is Medusa is the most overpowered character in Smite Tactics as of right now. The mana is cheap, the stats are really good, she has range which instantly makes her even better, and her ability just executes a target. She is extremely powerful. She can deal with anything from a distance. Really powerful. You almost as long as you can craft her, which does take a lot of dust to get, you always want her in a deck. As of right now, she is the most overpowered character. Next we have another spell in Sanctuary. 4 mana, make a unit immune to damage until the start of your next turn. So this card is also one of those pretty underwhelming cards. It can be good in certain aspects. It can keep a character or yourself alive for a turn. But most of the time, because of how expensive it is to cast, 4 mana is a lot for a card like this. It makes the card not that good. Because if, say, you want to save your Medusa or your Aphrodite for a turn, so you play Sanctuary, then you're literally just playing Sanctuary, and instead you could just be playing another Aphrodite or Medusa to completely combat the fact that it's going to get killed the next turn. So Sanctuary just really stalls and has too much mana to really make up for it. So not a good card, I don't think. Now we have another god, Hades. 5 mana, 2/6, range. So a good stats for range, but nothing too special. He has initiative, and his ability is fear all enemies in target area. So what fear does is causes a unit to run from their fear, which basically means they run backwards from wherever you fear them at, and then makes them unable to move, so basically rooting them afterwards. So Hades is the ultimate destroyer of all melee characters in this game, basically. Because he makes them run outside of the melee range by fearing them away, and then he roots them so they can't move back into melee range after you do this. Against ranged characters, this ability kinda sucks because they can just pick you off anyway, even after you're getting feared. But with melee characters, this completely makes them useless. So as long as you use your Hades right, he can be very powerful. Good card. Now we have another minion, Spartan. 5 mana, 1/4. So stats are terrible for the mana cost. Does his ability make up for it? Well, let's see. Aura. Aura applies effect to adjacent units, so everything close to it. Adjacent friendlies receive 1 less damage. So basically, the Aphrodite effect to a variety of characters on your team, as long as they are bunched up. This card looks really good on paper, but in play, it is not that good because of how bad those stats are. the stats for that mana are just really bad, and also he does not give this effect to himself. So basically, you just prioritize this guy, kill him, and then you just wasted 5 mana to do nothing to your team for the long run. So if this guy costed less mana, then he would be very, very powerful and very good. But for that mana cost, the ability just is not good enough, even with how good the ability is. Now if you can say get a taunt to keep him covered, then he can be very powerful, but on his own with just a couple of range minions next to him, he's not that good.
Wisdom shall be my shield.
And for the last card in the Greek Pantheon, we have Athena, 6 mana god with taunt, 2/6 for the stats, so that's good stats for a taunt minion. You like a lot of health on them. And her ability really makes her good. Teleport anywhere on the map and deal 1 damage to all adjacent enemies. Basically what that means is that you cannot get free of an Athena. You want to play your Athena in a safe area where they cannot remove her very quickly, then suddenly you teleport into the group of enemies and they are all taunted. And you get a couple damage to them. So Athena is a very good card and you should definitely run her. I hope you enjoyed this video covering the Greek Pantheon. I'll see you guys later.